turbocharging a square body Chevy truck, Blazer, Suburban, 1009 with the 6.2 diesel or a 6.5. You got that. This is a GM8 turbo. It says GM8 on it. It's off of a 98 6.5 engine I got that had run out of oil. I'll use this as a demonstration. So none of the square body diesel trucks came with a turbo. Late 93, early 94, GM started adding turbos to 6.5 engines. And then into 94, from then all the way on, there's always been a turbo on their engines, the diesels. Option available. I think for a couple years you could buy an NA 6.5, 94, 95, somewhere in there. Maybe 96. But once they switched, I think in 98, there was no more non-turbo options. Don't hold me to that. I might be wrong. Anyway, parts are out there. And two of the best sites, as far as I'm concerned, as far as square body Chevrolet knowledge, one is CK5, ColoradoK5.com. CK5 is super helpful people, extremely knowledgeable, and lots of people on there have diesels in their square bodies or have had diesels and are now have nightmares. The other one is Steel Soldiers for the military trucks. Lots of square body people there too. Between the two sites, you can find pretty much anything you want to know about trucks. It comes up all the time. I just got a 1009, 1008 Suburban, whatever. I just got something and I want to put a turbo on it. It's got a 6.2. I want to turbo it. How do I do it? Up until 8 or 9 years ago, the answer was spend $3,300 from Banks Engineering and you get a bolt-in turbo kit from the air intake, which is right here underneath the grill, all the way to the tailpipe. I've heard different reasons, but what 13, 14, 15 time frame, Banks stopped selling the 6.2 kits. They still sell the old 6.9, 7.3 Ford indirect injection kits, which have the same turbo mount. And you can take a Ford 6.9 or 7.3 Banks turbo, put it onto their manifold for the 6.2, and you get a bigger turbo, you get a wastegate. You got to remake your exhaust some, but other than that, it's no problem. Either way, you got to spend a lot of money to do that. Finding those bigger turbos, which I like to put on here, I've yet to see one less than $1,000, and they say that there's marks where the blades have hit the housing. It's like, I'm not buying that. Anyway, the options of turboing a square body Chevy, Banks Engineering. It is built for this truck. It was a GMC dealer option back in the 80s, actually. It fits. It works. But they're not making the kits anymore. When I looked, actually, the post, I think on Steel Soldiers, someone was asking about the same, how do I put a turbo on here? Someone replied, get the Banks kit. Or maybe it was CK5, I don't remember. And Banks says they don't sell them anymore, but they're still out there. If you Google search, don't search for a truck or a Blazer because they're gone. But the Suburban kits are still there. Who knows how long they'll be there. It was a $3,100 dealer option in '88. I think the price I saw the other day was $3,200 for the kit without the exhaust, all the way to the exhaust. That's what I have on this truck. I was going to show you where it is and then talk about why that's the better kit for the square bodies if you have air conditioning and want to keep factory air. If you don't want to keep the factory air, then the GM turbos are the things you want to go with. But you're going to spend a bunch of money either way. That makes sense. Let me show you what we got here. So 87 Suburban. It's a GEP 6500, which is the same size on the outside as the 6.2. All right. See the blue turbo blanket? Got the Banks air filter right there. Turbo blanket. And I got my air intake up. supposed to go to a normal 6.2 intake, but I have a 6.5 center mount turbo intake on there. And yes, there's a video about that, how I made that and why I made that. And you can see the down through here, the downpipe going back to exit the exhaust. You can also see all the air conditioning here. All right, I'm gonna put the camera right here and zoom in a little bit. Now, Banks kit, if they were still available and didn't cost so darn much, number one answer. They're great because it fits and they have really detailed instructions. Your next option is the GM. From 94 up until they stopped making the side mount turbo in late 99, early 2000, your next option is the GM turbo. Now, the GM turbos, they all have wastegates, vacuum operated wastegate. And that one actually works. That's a GM8 turbo. I also have a GM4 turbo on one of the cans on the green wall over there behind us. You can see over here, one of the cans over there has a 6.5 with a turbo set all set up on it, my spare. The GM, oh yeah, the crossover pipe. You have to have both sides of the engine contributing to spin the turbo. So on a V8, you have to get the air from one side to the other side. The Banks crossover pipe uses the stock 6.2 or 6.5 exhaust manifold on the driver's side, comes around the bottom front of the engine under the harmonic balancer, in front of the harmonic balancer actually, but out of the way of the steering, and goes in the turbo, which is mounted, as you saw, real low and forward on the passenger side. GM, because the turbos went into the GMT 400, like the white truck with the military green fender, that's a GMT 400. These are all square bodies. So the GMT 400 had independent front suspension. That means there was no front drive shaft or front axle that had to move. They're all set up in there. The differential didn't move. So they put the crossover pipe around the back of the engine under the torque converter housing, and the turbo sat right around here, right in the middle of the manifold over here. So we got between 4 and 6, right about here. You'll notice that's where the AC evaporator is. And that's the problem with using the GM turbos with a factory air-conditioned truck. This was supposed to be right here. Won't fit at all. What some people have done, I applaud them for their efforts, is they take all this off, and apparently if you get an S10 from the late 80s, early 90s, evaporator housing, it's a whole lot shorter and smaller, and you can make that fit and Bondo and fiberglass it up and make yourself a thing. Then your trouble comes into the crossover pipe. The crossover pipe needs to go side to side. And the molded exhaust manifold that holds the turbo wants it to come in the back. The passenger side drop drive shaft on these trucks is in the way. You have to pretty much run your exhaust back around the transfer case almost, or over the tail of the transmission and bring it back up again. Then you see this big downpipe. That has to go somewhere. And there's no room between the frame and the body for that to go because the crossover pipe's already in the way that the normal exhaust goes. So some people do 1-inch body lifts. Other people will take a 3-inch pipe like that one is, flatten it out for that area, insulate the heck out of it. Or what a lot of people do is just run the downpipe outside the frame, under the floor, to the back of the cab or to the rear tire, and then dump it out there. However you want to do it. But like I was saying earlier, the Banks kit gets you from air intake to uh, exhaust tailpipe pipe. The GM kit, you're gonna be making stuff like this. There's no computer control in this engine to tell this thing to open and close to control the boost. So you have to take this housing off. There's a place out in Yakima, Washington called Heath Diesel. Call up, you get Mr. Heath himself. He's a super nice guy to talk to, very knowledgeable. I have his, what I got on here? I got his water pump, fan, and fan clutch on this, heavy duty fan clutch. Thing sounds like an airplane taking off when it kicks in. I can feel it. When that fan thing locks up, that big, it's not a Duramax fan, but it's as big as a Duramax fan. When that thing locks in, I'm driving down the highway at 2,500 RPM. I can feel it. The whole truck stutters. But my temperature just makes a race for the low as it'll go, transmission temperature and engine temperature. Anyway, Mr. Heath, his company will sell you a spring loaded uh, wastegate controller, or most people take thread or rod, use some springs they got sitting around, or buy at Home Depot and play around and make it so that the thing will top out about 8 or 9 psi of boost. Anyway, if you go with the GM route, you have to make things. Yes, it's cheaper because you can probably get the whole setup like I got sitting there, plus the manifold and everything else for a few $100s. Then you gotta make everything else, and you gotta make it fit your intake somehow or another too. Then you gotta make all your exhaust. There's another company called ATS. I have never purchased from them or dealt with them. I've only seen pictures of the ATS turbo. Uh, no one ever complains about them, but no one really talks them up that much. I don't know if they make them anymore or not. I tried doing a search years ago and couldn't find anything. So, square body, diesel, turboing. There's not much options out there. You got the few remaining Banks kits out there, or if nothing else, try to get on eBay, try to find the Banks exhaust manifold turbo mount. Once you get that, you can do the rest. But if you have the serpentine belt set up, like I do, then it fits just fine. But the serpentine vacuum pump is real close to the turbo. So anyway, hopefully that helps somebody get mental images of what you need for the turbo setups. Like I said, if you can find the Banks kit, if it's for you got a truck or a Blazer or a 1009, and you find the Suburban kit, all you got to do is cut a couple feet out of uh, the exhaust for the Blazer. The Suburban, I think, is 3 inches different wheelbase than the single cab Chevy long bed square bodies. So that should fit on no matter what. Suburban and truck are the same wheelbase pretty much. But the GM one isn't the only option out there for cheap. Junkyard together. You know how to weld? Great. Banks one, that's your full start. Oh yeah, I got another engine over there too. I forgot about that engine. Anyway, hope this helps somebody.